February 13th, 1943. 7:18 a.m. USS Bunker Hill, Western Pacific Ocean. The deck is already slick with salt spray. The carrier pitches just enough to make every step feel uncertain. Below the roar of engines and the slap of waves, a single aircraft taxis forward, long-nosed dark blue, wings folded like a resting bird of prey. From the cockpit, the pilot can barely see the deck ahead of him. The nose blocks everything. The signal officer drops his arm. Full throttle. The engine answers with a violent bellow, 2,000 horsepower ripping through metal and bone. The aircraft lunges forward, tail shaking, torque pulling hard to the left. In seconds, the deck is gone. Just empty air and ocean. For a heartbeat, the Corsair sinks. Then it claws upward, fast too fast, snapping into the sky like it's been waiting to escape. Behind him, men on deck exhale. Some laugh, others don't. They've seen this before. They've seen what happens when it goes wrong. Because the Vought F4U Corsair isn't just another fighter. Among Navy pilots, it already has a name, the Ensign Killer. The Japanese had heard about it months earlier. Intelligence briefings filtered through air units in Rabaul, Truk, and the Solomons reports of a new American fighter with absurd speed, an oversized engine, and a propeller so large it forced the wings into a strange, inverted gull shape. Japanese test pilots scoffed, too heavy, too fast on approach, too unstable to land on a carrier. An aircraft like that, they said, would kill its own pilots long before it ever reached combat. And for a while they were right. The Corsair was born from ambition. In 1938, the U.S. Navy demanded something radical, a carrier fighter faster than anything in the world. Vaught's engineers responded by building the airframe around the most powerful engine available, the Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp. It was a monster, 18 cylinders, nearly 2,000 horsepower, more power than most fighters could safely handle. To translate that power into speed, Vought fitted the Corsair with the largest propeller ever mounted on a single-engine fighter, 13 feet, 4 inches of spinning violence. There was only one problem. To keep that propeller from striking the deck during takeoff and landing, the landing gear would have needed to be absurdly tall, too tall, and fragile for carrier use. So engineers bent the wings downward, then back up again. The inverted gull wing, elegant on paper, deadly in practice. In testing, the Corsair flew like a dream in the air. Fast, brutally fast. It could outrun nearly everything, climb like it was being pulled by a wire, and dive so steeply pilots joked it would beat gravity in a race. But landing it, especially on a carrier, was something else entirely. The long nose blocked forward visibility. Pilots had to weave back and forth just to see the deck. The landing gear bounced instead of absorbing impact, touched down a little too hard, and the aircraft would leap back, into the air, right into the path of the carrier's island or parked aircraft. The stall characteristics were worse. At low speeds, the left wing would drop without warning. 1 second you're lined up, the next, the aircraft snaps sideways, smashing into steel. By mid-1942, crashes were piling up. Young pilots, fresh ensigns, dead before ever seeing combat. The Navy made a decision. They grounded the Corsair from carrier operations. Officially, it was unsuitable for deck landings. Unofficially, it was a death trap. And that should have been the end of it. But war has a way of finding uses for dangerous things. While the Navy hesitated, the Marines were desperate. In the Pacific, Marine fighter squadrons were operating from crude island airstrips, coral runways carved out of jungle and blood. Guadalcanal, Bougainville, Espiritu Santo. Places where speed meant survival and altitude meant life. The Japanese Zero still ruled much of the sky, not because it was fast, but because it was light, agile, and deadly in a turning fight. Marine pilots flying Wildcats knew the cost of engaging it the wrong way. They needed something different, something that didn't turn tighter but hit harder, climbed faster, and struck once before disappearing. They looked at the Corsair and saw possibility. On land, many of the Corsair's worst sins vanished. There were no carrier decks rushing towards you, no island superstructure waiting to tear off a wing. No pitching deck magnifying every mistake. There was just runway, sky, space. Marine pilots began to experiment. They learned to land hot, fast, and shallow to avoid sudden stalls. They mastered the long nose by flying curved approaches. They respected the torque, the bounce, the bite. And once airborne, the Corsair came alive. At altitude, it was untouchable. Faster than the Zero by more than 50 miles per hour. Able to dive away from danger, then climb back up before the enemy could follow. Its 650 caliber machine guns tore through lightly armored Japanese fighters like paper. Japanese pilots noticed immediately. A dark blue shape would appear above them, diving almost vertically, guns blazing, then vanish upward before they could respond. No turning fight, no warning, no mercy. They gave it a name of their own, Whistling Death. But reputation alone doesn't win wars. The Corsair still hadn't proven itself, not fully, not yet. The Japanese still believed its weaknesses could be exploited, that its speed masked instability, that sooner or later American pilots would push it too far. And soon, high above the islands of the Central Pacific, they would try. Because in the hands of the Marines, the Unflyable aircraft was about to rewrite the rules of air combat, one brutal engagement at a time. And the pilots who once feared it, they were about to trust it with their lives. The first real test comes without warning. August 1st, 1943, 14,000 feet over Vella La Vella, Solomon Islands. The sky is a blinding Pacific blue, the kind that hides danger until it's right on top of you. Marine Captain Kenneth Walsh, VMF 124, grips the stick of his Corsair as the aircraft vibrates with raw power. Below him, the island is a smear of green and coral. Ahead, tiny silver dots, zeros. They're climbing. Walsh counts them automatically, 4, maybe 6. They haven't seen him yet. You can almost feel the choice tightening around him. Turn and fight and die, or trust the machine everyone warned him about. Walsh pushes the nose down. The Corsair drops like a falling anvil. Airspeed climbs past 350 knots. The engine's roar deepens, steady and brutal, like it's daring the airframe to break. The Zeros grow larger in his gun sight. Pilot still unaware, still confident in their agility. Walsh squeezes the trigger. 650 caliber machine guns erupt at once. The Corsair shudders as if punched from the inside. Tracers reach out in a tight, glowing line. 1 Zero explodes mid-turn, fuel tank igniting, fragments tumbling away. Walsh doesn't follow. He never slows. He pulls back hard, climbing nearly vertical. The Corsair responds instantly, engine dragging him skyward. Below, the remaining Zeros try to follow and fail. Their lighter frames bleed speed. Their engines scream. Then they fall away. In seconds, Walsh is gone. Alive! This is the revelation. The Corsair was never meant to dogfight. It was meant to dictate. Marine pilots begin to understand that survival doesn't come from matching the Zero's turn, but from refusing it entirely. Speed becomes armor. Altitude becomes a weapon. Discipline becomes everything. They call it boom and zoom tactics, but in the cockpit it feels simpler. Hit first, hit hard, leave. The Japanese pilots are confused and then alarmed. For years, the Zero had dominated by forcing enemies into turning engagements, bleeding them dry with maneuverability. Now, American fighters are refusing to play along. They dive out of the sun, strike once, and vanish upward like ghosts. Worse, the Corsair can absorb punishment. Where a Zero might disintegrate under heavy fire, the Corsair's rugged construction shrugs off damage. Self-sealing fuel tanks, armor behind the pilot seat, thick wings built to survive dives at insane speeds. Japanese pilots fire and watch the American aircraft keep coming. Then they die. By late 1943, the kill ratios begin to shift dramatically. Marine squadrons flying Corsairs report victories at rates once thought impossible. 5-1, 7-1, sometimes more. The aircraft's reputation spreads faster than official communiques ever could. Japanese radio chatter picks up fragments of fear. A dark blue fighter, too fast to chase, climbs like a demon. Pilots warn each other, don't follow it down, don't follow it up. But warnings don't help when instinct takes over. Not everyone survives the learning curve. The Corsair still demands respect. Mishandle the throttle and torque will flip you. Come in too slow and the wing will betray you. Marines bury friends who mastered combat but misjudged a landing. Yet something changes in the squadrons. Fear turns into pride. Pilots begin painting skulls, sharks, and personal markings on the long noses. Ground crews work through the night to keep engines running, wiping coral dust from intakes, patching bullet holes with whatever metal they can find. The aircraft that once terrified its own pilots becomes something else entirely. A partner. Japanese intelligence takes notice. Captured documents later reveal assessments calling the Corsair extremely dangerous when properly handled. A careful phrase. An admission without surrender. Some Japanese pilots try new tactics, head-on passes, high-speed dives, but the Zero simply can't match the Corsair's raw energy. Every attempt to adapt ends the same way. Too slow, too fragile, too late. And the Americans are only getting better. By early 1944, the Corsair is everywhere. From Bougainville to the Marshalls, Marine squadrons leapfrog island to island, bringing the fighter closer to Japan itself. Each new airstrip shortens the distance. Each victory thins the ranks of Japan's most experienced pilotsmen who can't be replaced. The psychological shift is unmistakable. Japanese pilots used to hunt. Now they evade. They scan the sky above them constantly, knowing death comes from altitude, from speed, from a machine they once mocked as unflyable. Back on the carriers, the Navy watches all of this with growing unease and envy. The Corsair is proving itself beyond doubt. Its kill record is undeniable. Its pilots are dominating the skies, and yet, officially, it still isn't trusted to land on a moving deck. That contradiction can't last forever. Because as the war pushes west toward the Philippines, toward Okinawa, toward Japan itself, the Navy will need every advantage it can get, including the aircraft it once rejected. And soon, the Corsair will face its final trial, not against the enemy, but against the sea. April 18, 1944, 5:42 p.m., USS Essex, Philippine Sea. The sun is low, staining the ocean orange and red. Heat shimmers off the flight deck. Below, the carrier plows forward at flank speed, turning into the wind, always into the wind. A Corsair circles overhead. Lieutenant Commander Harold Swede Larson rolls his shoulders inside the cockpit, loosening muscles that have been tight for the last hour. He's flown combat. He's been shot at. None of that feels like this. Because today the enemy isn't Japanese fighters. It's the deck. You can almost feel the carrier pulling toward him, rising and falling like a living thing. The LSO landing signal officer stands at the stern, paddles raised, eyes locked on the incoming aircraft. Larson begins his approach. The Corsair's nose blocks the deck completely. Larson flies a constant curving descent, never straight, always slipping sideways just enough to keep the landing area in sight. The engine hums low and angry. Too much power, and he'll float. Too little, and the left wing could drop. He corrects. Tiny inputs. Sweat trickles under his helmet. The paddles dip. Larson eases back. The deck surges up. The wheels hit hard. For a split second, the Corsair bounces. Every man watching flinches. Then the tailhook slams down, catches a wire, and snaps the aircraft to a brutal stop. Larson's body lurches forward against the harness. His teeth click together. Silence. Then cheers. The Corsair sits on the deck, wing still folded, engine ticking as it cools. It's done. This moment has been coming for months. While Marine Corsairs rack up victories from island bases, Navy engineers and pilots have been quietly fixing what made the aircraft so dangerous. Stronger landing gear, modified oleo struts to reduce bounce. A raised pilot seat for better visibility. Subtle changes, nothing dramatic, but enough. Most importantly, pilots have changed how they fly it. The Corsair doesn't land straight on like older fighters. It demands a curved approach, precision throttle control, and absolute confidence. It punishes hesitation, rewards commitment. And now, at last, the Navy is ready to admit the truth. They need it. By mid-1944, the war has entered a new phase. American carriers are pushing west in massive task forces, steel cities, moving across open water. The Japanese air arm is bleeding experienced pilots at a catastrophic rate. What remains is younger, less trained men flying outdated aircraft. But desperation breeds new threats. Kamikaze tactics are emerging suicide attacks that no maneuverability can stop once committed. Stopping them requires speed, altitude, interception before they ever reach the fleet. The Corsair is built for exactly that. Once cleared for carrier operations, the aircraft spreads fast. Squadrons re-equip, training intensifies. The once feared fighter becomes routine, still dangerous, but understood. Pilots who once whispered about the Ensign Killer now fight over who gets to fly it. In combat air patrol, Corsairs loiter high above the fleet, engines throttled back, waiting. When radar contacts appear, they dive with terrifying acceleration. Japanese aircraft disintegrate under concentrated fire, often before they even spot the attackers. Some kamikaze pilots never reach their targets. They never see the Corsair coming. Japanese reports from late 1944 tell a grim story. Aircraft lost to unseen enemy fighters, pilots killed without engaging, interceptions occurring with no opportunity for counterattack. The Corsair isn't just winning dogfights. It's breaking morale, and then, inevitably, the myth shatters completely. In early 1945, Japanese intelligence intercepts confirm what pilots already know. The Corsair, once dismissed as unstable and unflyable, is now operating from American carriers in increasing numbers. The implications are terrifying. The aircraft they feared most no longer needs land. It can appear anywhere. For American pilots, the transformation is personal. Men who once feared the aircraft now trust it with blind faith. They speak of it like a living thing, temperamental, demanding, but loyal if respected. A machine that forces you to be better. A machine that gives everything back in return. And as the war grinds toward its bloodiest battles, toward Okinawa, toward Japan itself, the Corsair will be there, not as an experiment, not as a risk, but as a predator perfected. And in the final year of the war, it will face its ultimate test, not against fighters, not against decks, but against an enemy willing to die to get through. April 6, 1945, 8:03 a.m. radar picket station north of Okinawa. The ocean is unnaturally calm, gray, flat, the kind of morning that feels wrong even before anything happens. Then the radar scopes light up. Dozens of contacts, then more, low altitude, high speed, coming in from multiple directions. Kamikazes on the carrier decks and island airstrips, engines scream to life. Corsairs roll, unfold their wings, and launch in pairs, climbing hard into the thinning air. The pilots know what this means. This isn't a dogfight. This is a wall. High above the invasion fleet, Marine Major Robert Hansen throttles back, scanning the horizon. Below him, Okinawa burns columns of black smoke, twisting into the sky from ships already hit. Radio chatter floods his headset. Broken voices, urgent calls. Bandits, Angels 5, multiple bogies inbound. Ship taking hits, need cover now. Hansen pushes the throttle forward. The Corsair answers instantly. Japanese aircraft appear ahead, older models now. Zeros, Vals, Kates, some carrying bombs, some carrying nothing but themselves. Hansen lines up the first target. He fires. The Corsair's guns tear the enemy aircraft apart mid-air. Pieces scatter. The wreckage misses the water by seconds before slamming in. Hansen doesn't slow. He doesn't turn. Another target. Another burst. Another explosion. Around him, the sky is chaos. Corsairs streak through formations, climbing, diving, crossing paths at impossible speeds. Tracers crisscross the air. Smoke trails mark the last moments of pilots who never had a chance. Japanese aircraft keep coming. They always keep coming. This is where the Corsair proves something no statistics ever could. Endurance. It can climb, dive, fire, and climb again over and over without losing its edge. While lighter fighters exhaust themselves, the Corsair maintains energy. It stays above the fight. It chooses when to engage. Kamikaze pilots try to press through anyway. Some get close. Too close. On the deck of the destroyer USS Bush, sailors look up as a burning Japanese aircraft screams downward. For a split second, it looks unstoppable. Then a Corsair dives out of nowhere, guns blazing. The kamikaze disintegrates less than 200 yards from the ship. The shockwave rattles steel. The Corsair pulls up, trailing smoke, but flying. By the end of the day, the numbers are staggering. Hundreds of Japanese aircraft destroyed, many by Corsairs. Some squadrons claim kills in the double digits. Pilots land with empty ammo belts and engines coughing from overuse. They're exhausted, but the fleet is still afloat. Japanese survivors speak later of terror unlike anything they'd known. The Corsair doesn't circle. It doesn't duel. It appears, kills, and vanishes. There's no glory in fighting it, only fear. And yet, even here, the aircraft demands its price. Pilots land at night, fuel gauges near empty, nerves shredded. One misjudgment on approach still means death. The Corsair never forgives carelessness, not even now. But fewer mistakes are made. Experience has hardened everyone involved. As Okinawa drags on, weeks of relentless combat grind down what remains of Japan's air power. The Corsair is everywhere: escort, interceptor, ground attack platform. It strafes airfields, destroys supply convoys, and still rises to meet threats at altitude. It becomes routine, which is the most terrifying thing of all. By summer 1945, Japanese pilots know the truth. The aircraft they once mocked as unflyable has mastered land, sea, and sky. There's nowhere left to hide. And for the men flying it, one final realization settles in quiet, heavy, undeniable. The Corsair isn't just winning battles anymore. It has helped win the war. August 12, 1945, 6:41 p.m., above the East China Sea. The war is almost over. Everyone feels it, even if no one says it out loud. A Corsair cruises at altitude, engine throttled back, the horizon washed in gold as the sun sinks toward the water. The pilot, his name doesn't matter anymore, rests one gloved hand lightly on the stick. Below him, the sea stretches endlessly, quiet in a way that feels unfamiliar after years of violence. No contacts on radar. No frantic calls over the radio. Just sky. For months, the Corsair has done everything asked of it. It has intercepted bombers before they reached the fleet. It has shredded fighters that never even saw it coming. It has raked airfields and convoys until nothing moved. It has flown from coral strips and steel decks, from jungle heat and open ocean, asking only one thing in return: respect. Back in Japan, surviving pilots speak carefully. They remember when the Corsair first appeared, fast, awkward, seemingly unstable. They remember laughing at reports of American crashes. An aircraft like that, they said, could never rule the sky. What they hadn't understood was that the Corsair wasn't meant to be easy. It was meant to be mastered. And once mastered, it was unstoppable. The numbers tell part of the story. The Corsair finishes the war with one of the highest kill ratios of any fighter in the Pacific, over 11-1. More than 2,100 enemy aircraft destroyed in air combat. Losses to enemy fighters? A fraction of that. But numbers don't explain the fear. They don't explain the way Japanese pilots learned to scan the sky above them instead of ahead, or the way American pilots learned to trust speed over instinct, discipline over bravado. They don't explain how an aircraft that killed its own pilots in training became the most feared fighter of the theater. On American airfields and carrier decks, Corsairs sit in neat rows now, paint chipped, panels patched, oil streaked across wings and fuselages. Each one carries a story of a pilot who learned too slowly or just in time. Men gather around them in silence. Some will go home, some won't. The Corsair's legacy doesn't end with the war. It will fly again over Korea, years later, still fast, still deadly, still demanding. But that's another story. For now, in 1945, it stands as proof of something uncomfortable and true, that the most dangerous tools are often the ones worth mastering. That fear can be a warning or a challenge. That victory sometimes belongs to those willing to tame what others call impossible. The Japanese were right about one thing. The Corsair was unflyable until it wasn't.